please, if you've checked us out before and you like us, why don't you give us a subscribe? Mount Rushmore, not of the presidents, we're not going to do that, but of MMA heavyweights. Interesting for me. I'll tell you my list, and I'll let you, we'll talk about it. But I thought two things are interesting to me when I was going to put MMA heavyweights. One, it's the only list where one of my top guys has never fought in the UFC. And another guy on my list currently fights for another organization too. So we'll see. And the other thing I thought was interesting was that, I like to sometimes look to see what people have for their own list and stuff like that, like what the top list is. And I couldn't help but notice like John Jones was in one of the first names for heavyweight. But to me, John Jones, greatest fighter of all time. Yeah, I mean, you could talk Habib and some other guys in there, but sure, greatest light heavyweight of all time. Now, question, I think he has that resume. But he hasn't fought that many times at heavyweight. Although heavyweight, when you get beyond the four we're going to talk about today, it does get a little bit not as deep, and you could definitely say if he kept fighting or, if he did fight Tom and won that fight, I might have a different list of that, but I don't. And the other thing that was interesting to me when I was thinking about John, and John Jones fans will hate me for this, but I'm serious as hell when I say this. I think Daniel Cormier has a better heavyweight resume because he fought more at heavyweight. And I would probably rank him above John, even though not like if all-time fighter, John, but just heavyweights, I feel like I give it to DC a little.
Right. Looking at the work, you have to look at who they fought.
Right.
And John just hasn't. I mean, Cyril Gane is Cyril Gane. And he fought Stipe, who was, up there, but just way, way past his prime. He was off for years.
But I will use that's the Stipe will put some holes in some logic here for me, but I will because I'm going to have Stipe on my list and a lot of other people. So let me start off with my fourth guy, which was Cain Velasquez. I'm going to rank him too. Cain is awesome heavyweight, beat Brock Lesnar up, two-time champ, really dominant, amazing cardio. Injury kind of plagued Cain, but when you look at Cain's career, he was the most dominant heavyweight for that time. Unfortunately, there wasn't a ton of domination in UFC heavyweights. I think Cain had like 2 title defenses in his first reign and then again on his second reign. And then, but I had to put Cain in at my number 4 spot. I just felt like, he had enough of a resume that he should be on that list. Number 3, I went with Stipe because Stipe, I don't know if there's been a guy in the UFC in more heavyweight title fights than Stipe. When you think about multiple-time champ, defeated Cormier, those title fights, the one with Jones he just lost. So I felt like Stipe was the guy. If Cormier had won that fight when they fought, that last time, I think Cormier would have been the guy. But Stipe was, and so he's got.
I think Stipe had the most title defenses.
For
UFC heavyweight. Yeah.
He's definitely, if he had 3, because he's a multiple-time champ too, and then you think about time lost it to Francis and then came back with Jones, he's been in a lot of championship fights. So that was Stipe was number 3. Much like Cain, great hand speed for a heavyweight too. Number 2, maybe a little controversial pick, but I got Francis because Francis was probably one of the most devastating hitters at his time. He also knocked out Stipe, and Stipe was at a higher level than he was when he fought John. And he knocked out Cain when we never saw Cain really fight again after that, I think. And I still think Cain could have been really, good at that time. We won't know. But he just had that power, and I still think, I don't know if there's been an MMA heavyweight who has the kind of power, in his peak that Francis did. And so for that, he's my number 2. Number 1 is Fedor because nobody has that kind of resume of being unbeaten in the streak he was in Pride for so long. Just so dominant, so legendary with fights, against Krokop, Nogueira, and until he got to Strikeforce and kind of had a bit of a jinx there, with people like Radum and Dan Henderson. There wasn't anybody who could touch Fedor. And even towards the end of his career, still putting on entertaining fights, Would have loved if the UFC back in the day could have got Fedor and Brock Lesnar in a fight just because of where they were both at that time and what that would have looked like in terms of the spectacle. But obviously that never happened. So Fedor is my number 1. I'm assuming you have some of those guys.
I do. I have a few, so I'll do what you did in order. So number 4 for me, I have Francis Ngannou. Same reasons you said, just intimidation factor, most KO power ever in MMA for sure. My number 3 is going to be Fabricio Verdum. So one of the best submission artists of all time. Great off his back, which is incredibly rare for a heavyweight. Maybe him and like Frank Mir maybe are the only guys I can really think that are really dangerous off their back at that. So, and he beat both Cain and Fedor.
Yes.
In their primes. So, but with that being said, my number 2 is Cain Velasquez. Obviously, cardio. He revolutionized what heavyweights are expected to have cardio wise. So, and with his wrestling, he just ground people down. So he beat some of the best guys ever too. So number one, I'm with you. Got to be Fedor. Just pure dominance. He legitimately set the standard for heavyweight MMA champion. Yeah, we agree overall for the most part. I actually thought you were gonna have Mirko Cro Cop on your list. So
I would have thought about Cro Cop was one I thought about because of a lot of his, a couple other guys I thought about, Nogueira, and then Radum was probably the one I was closest to putting in because actually when I was going over my list too, I started thinking about that. Even before you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, well, he does hold a victory over Kane, and Radum. So we started talking about the Strike Force. I'm like, oh yeah, but I don't know. I'd still like my list, but yeah, there's a lot of fun arguments, and you even do have your arguments for guys like John Jones and Daniel Cormier too. I mean, that might be looking at the top 10 here, but yeah, overall, I think we're on pretty much the same page.